One of the most impressive comparisons I think I've ever done is the S90C versus the S95B. So at the bottom is the S90C, new 2023, 2022 Samsung S95B at the top. I'm going to just put this out there right now. The S95B is the winner overall, but it was so incredibly close. So I'm going to go over why it was close, what the differences are, and what you can expect and basically what it means for you. So if you like that kind of thing, subscribe and let's get started. So for starters, they look very similar, but the red on the S95B is more pure, while the red on the S90C is more almost like a pinkish in hue. Now, again, it's going to be almost impossible to pick up on camera, but that's the difference here. As far as green goes, they're very identical. There's basically not much of a difference, although again, similarly, the screen does dim a little bit more and it shifts. So there's a little darkness to the S90C, just a little bit more than the S95B, because the S95B in some instances can get much brighter in some areas. So it chooses, it's weird. It's programming of the algorithm, I imagine. So it's choosing to brighten certain things up. And you'll see this in other examples like Crunchyroll, when you'll see the text, certain colors like orange specifically really struggle on the S95B. Now, in terms of yellow, the yellow at the top and bottom look, again, very identical. I can't tell a difference as I'm looking at them. Now, this is where the differences start to come in. The color cyan. So the cyan on the S95B, again, you will not be able to see this. You're just going to have to take my word for it. Okay. The S95B has more of a greenish hue to the cyan, which I personally prefer, where the cyan on the S90C is more cool in nature. Now, this is not the only color where we see this phenomenon happen. We also see it with other colors, but orange, this is what I was talking about. So if you notice at the bottom, it's significantly darker, the orange, on the S90C than on the S95B. This is something that I noticed when watching Crunchyroll and the logos started popping up, and the S95B was just a little bit more faded by comparison. Now, that doesn't mean that it's bad, but it is definitely not able to be as dark. Now, I don't know what the S90C's programming or algorithmic processing is to make colors dark like this, but as you're seeing, it's significantly darker to the point where those are two incredibly different shades of orange. So one at the top is like more of a fall orange, and the one at the bottom is more like a Halloween orange, which, you know, like think jack-o'-lantern or, you know, pumpkin patch or something like that. It's a very different shade of orange. So it's something, you know, you might like or you might not like. But in terms of other colors, you will not, again, be able to see this on camera. Maybe you will. The magenta at the top, forget about it. It's incredible on the Samsung S95B, exactly the correct shade. Very, very, very pale and muted and washed out on the S90C, which I found very interesting. Now, these are two very important colors. You're talking orange and you're talking magenta, these two colors having these wild representations. Now, unfortunately, Samsung is not a company that allows you to use what I call an HSL, or hue, saturation, and luminance way of adjusting color or managing the color. This in English means you can't lower the overluminance that we're seeing here, because it's clear that there is a brightness issue. For example, the magenta here at the bottom, and then it's just way too dark here. We need to be able to brighten it up, but we can't do that without adjusting the global brightness. So this becomes a huge problem. Now, there's some funky stuff that we can do really creatively in the lower parts of the IRE on the grayscale to try to draw something else out, but it really throws off all the rest of the color. So then it becomes a balancing act that's almost impossible. So it really gets to a point where the only thing that you could really do is just kind of let it be what it is. And this is very much something that Samsung has to work on. Now, again, it's not the end of the world, but I'm going on a long tangent about color because these differences are ultimately the only way you'll really be able to tell a difference between these two displays. If we look at skin tones, we can kind of see what I'm talking about. At the top, the Samsung S95B just has the more natural rendition of skin, where on the bottom the S90C has a little bit more of a red push to it. And you can even see that in the flower. Again, might not show up on YouTube through the video, but I'm telling you what I'm seeing here, so just kind of roll with it. In terms of clarity, the S95B is also the clearer image by far, so that is something to take away as well. Now again, it's not to say that they don't have moments where they look absolutely identical, like in this example here. They really just kind of look like twin TVs, like I bought the same TV twice and it kind of becomes like, okay, which one is which? So again, it's not saying that the S90C has no way of winning anything or comparing. It's only when you really start squinting that you'll notice the stronger highlights on the S95B on things like her chin, down at the bottom there, and underneath the eyes, and on the makeup and stuff like that. But again, we're talking about a really discerning eye, and while I have that, the average customer and consumer is just not going to do that and probably not going to have that. So we do have to be realistic with that. Now, in terms of overall representation of color and clarity, both do a phenomenal job of looking absolutely stunning. But again, that highlight placement on the S95B is ultimately what does end up taking the cake, and a lot of people are going to go for that over, you know, something that, again, this is a step down in a way visually, especially with color. That was one of the biggest things I talked about from the moment I saw it. Again, skin tones being very different here, where the top, the S95B is nailing the skin tones. There's a lot more. You can see actually the red in her cheek, which is indicative of the blood flow beneath the skin. This is a level of accuracy that the S90C is just not able to hit. If you stepped up to the S95C, you would see that. So these are the differences and why there's a separation between the two. Knowing the differences and what you're going to get is important, because you have to determine, is it really important for you to spend the extra money to see the blood flow beneath the skin, or do you really not care? That's something only you can answer, but at least in that aspect, that's what I can tell you there. Now, dynamic range is where things get pretty interesting. So we're talking the darkest darks to the brightest whites, and if you look at the top on the Samsung S95B, you can make out the sun much clearer than you can on the Samsung S90C at the bottom. Also, gradationally, the transition between colors, you can see way more gradients, way more variations in shades of color from, again, it just gets super dark all the way to super bright. And on here, you do have gradients, but it's not as intense as it is on the Samsung S95B at the top. Don't know if that's what YouTube is going to show you, but that is, again, sitting in front of it, exactly what I'm seeing here. And in terms of highlight placement, now things shift. So I'm noticing that there is just such a sharpness to the S90C in terms of clarity. And they really did a great job this year with their processor and the way they render things. So you don't have to worry about feeling like, oh, I messed up, I bought the S90C. No, it's a really clear and sharp three-dimensional draw to the image, which is very impressive. Everything is isolated way sharper in this example than it is on the Samsung S95B to the top. Not that the S95B is doing poorly, but as far as clarity and the processing is definitely better this year on the Samsung S90C because of whatever they did differently. So that extra year to tune up the processor made a difference, and that's something I'm here to report for you guys. Now, in terms of, again, skin quality, color, things like that, once things start getting into focus and there's a face on the screen, that's where the processing on the S95B takes over. So I feel like the Real Depth Enhancer is really just kind of prioritizing geometry more or less on the Samsung S90C, where the S95B is like looking for things like portraits, like what we have on the screen right now of a face or something like that, where now when there's isolation around a sharp subject, now the S95B at the top is sharper than a couple of frames ago when it's really, she's not the focus, the geometry is the focus, and the S90C was nailing that a lot better, which is very confusing. But again, we can't really determine how Samsung's algorithm is going to process an image, but both are doing a great job. But again, if you notice the color orange, just darker on the Samsung S90C, which is not accurate, and the dress looks way less realistic than on the Samsung S95B at the top. So it really just does depend on what you're looking for in terms of picture quality, because it's really a battle of accuracy versus something that's like just slightly less accurate, but then has moments like now where it'll pull ahead in depth and dynamic range, as we're seeing here. The S90C is beating the S95B like literally all around in this particular example. Again, no idea what YouTube's going to show you, but that's what I'm seeing here. As far as this goes, it's kind of more of the same. It's pretty much a tie, so they're both really clear, but the S90C at the bottom does have the better clarity or three-dimensional pop or draw to it in this example. So as you watch these kind of test images, if you will, they do switch back and forth. Now at the top, the Samsung S95B takes it. We're going to go to the next one. The Samsung S95B takes it in terms of clarity and three-dimensionality and color. And the highlights actually are going to go to the Samsung S90C at the bottom because global brightness is bigger and wider, I can notice, across the scale of the skin than what we have on the Samsung S95B. So again, these are very, if you can't tell, like nerdy, nuanced things that I'm able to pick up on as I'm looking at it. But when you're watching like a mountain scene, you're probably not going to notice all this in an instant. But to be very fair, there is a massive difference in terms of the depth coming off of the S95B at the top versus the S90C at the bottom. And these differences over time do start to add up. Movies like Tron will show you a lot more of what I've been saying in terms of like clarity on both displays. It's really like one of those showcase pieces I think everyone who's an enthusiast of any kind should own. Both TVs are doing an exceptional job. I don't really see an edge coming off of either display when we're looking at Tron. Both really do look incredibly good, and it's looking like this is where they start tying a lot more. And you're gonna find it really hard to say, oh, one is a definitive winner over the other. Now again, like in everything, scenes start to change. Like in this scene, for example, the S90C is now, this is where we're starting to see gradations matter a ton. And the S95B at the top has more. So as the light cycles are gliding past the grid, you are able to see way more shades of, you know, the brightest orange to the darkest orange, where on the S90C, it's a little bit more faint in comparison to the S95B. Now, to be very clear, the S95B is pound for pound the best television you could possibly buy on the market today on planet Earth. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right now. But it is discontinued, and so you have to look for 2023 versions of it. And the S90C is coming close to that performance. It's not quite there, but it is close. And I think most people, if you buy it and you have something like my settings, like what I'm rocking right now, you're not gonna notice, right? It's gonna be like a like for like, and you're gonna be like, yeah, this is pretty much on point. Now, I mentioned my settings because I have to be very honest with you. This TV out of the box is not capable of an image like this, and I will show you that now because that gets kind of missed. So we're gonna be in the standard mode right here, okay? If you go to dynamic, this is what your image is gonna look like. Blown out, way too damn blue. I don't even know what they were thinking. It's hard to call themselves engineers at this point that have all these years of experience if that's how the TV comes shipping. So then we go eco mode. Eco mode, not so bad, but again, almost the same as dynamic mode. Way too damn blue, really hard to call yourself an engineer with any kind of technical prowess. Okay, so then we go to movie mode. Okay, a little bit better, but now it's super washed out and you're missing all of the color. It's basically something from 2004 versus something from 2023. And that's a problem because we don't buy these TVs to be left behind. We want to stay where we are. And filmmaker mode is more of the same, washed, pukey, garbage. So you have a choice. You can either go with washed, pukey, garbage, filmmaker mode with all of the industry professionals from the ISF certified, the THX certified, everybody who's bragging and beating their chest basically like we're amazing, right? Okay, but then there's what I do over here that just completely destroys everything that they stand to claim, which again, it's not hard to see these results. They do speak for themselves. And again, I can show more of this later on, but the point of this is you have to dial in these TVs and know how to do it more importantly. If you do not, you are not going to experience an image worth a damn. And again, if you go to like a scene like this, right, where it's really bright and you're rocking dynamic or you're rocking eco, like it's gonna look like trash. Like this will look like, what even is that? So not having that extra color, it's a day and night difference. And it's something that, yes, it's a nuanced and very niche thing, but it's something that definitely does make a difference. Having the blood beneath the skin, for example, in this scene, again, just for dramatic effect, let's say we this time want to go to ISF mode or, you know, filmmaker mode. You can see filmmaker mode is washed out by comparison. I mean, really, let's select filmmaker mode, the industry's best, right? They say everything should be in filmmaker mode. All right, so I set it to the mode they say you should set it to, and now we're done, right? Which TV would you rather watch? The TV at the top or the TV at the bottom? And be honest with yourself. Does this image at the top look like what you were expecting when they said QD-OLED, or does this crap? Because I get so in my feels over like the fact that they can stand on, we've been in the business all these years and talking all that mojo and all that crap and being all, hey, I'm a professional. It's like, that's really cute, my guy, but your results are literally ass, and I'm gonna show you to yourself. Because at this point, consumers are trusting all these so-called industry experts and leaders to deliver an image worth a damn, and we're not getting that. And it's so frustrating because it's like these TVs are not cheap, and these modes like filmmaker mode are part of the reason why it's not so cheap, because of collaboration deals and sponsorships. And so if it's gonna drive the price of our TV up and it's gonna freaking look like that, like just throw the $5, become a member, and there you go. You've got what you actually paid for. Like it's really a joke at this point. Like it's actually infuriating. So to move on from that point, you can clearly see that both TVs are still doing a great job. And actually the highlight detail on the S90C at the bottom is coming just a little bit ahead of the S95B at the top, where of course still the gradation and the clarity is pulling ahead on the S95B. The moral of the story is both TVs are incredibly spec'd and they can do a lot together, but you've really got to understand it's a scene by scene thing. Some things are going to trade off and back and forth, but to be fair, I think we did a great job getting an S90C, which was never intended to compete with something like an S95B, to compete at a level where it's now pretty much the same thing, more or less. And you know, the speakers, by the way, on the S90C, every bit as good as the S95B, so you don't have to worry about that. Really, the experience is very comparable. And I think a lot of people know that going into it, but again, I really have to harp on the fact that you need to set it up. I don't care if you don't ever throw $5 my way and join my settings and get what I do, okay? If you try it by yourself, you're still going to have to dial it in because it's not gonna come the way I'm showing you here. So while I'm showing you, wow, it can hit S95B level of performance, which is a flagship level, like that's unbelievable. That's my work. That's not Samsung. Samsung will not come like that, as we saw a second ago with that dead ass picture. So this is something to keep in mind as we're going through different comparisons and things like that. But all that being said, I want to hear what you guys think. Which one would you go for, the S95B or the S90C? Let me know down below. Me personally, I'm putting my hat on the Samsung S95B. It does win overall, but the S90C ain't bad either. Thanks for watching the #1 brand in honesty, and until the next video, I'll see you guys later.